there's been a lot of these things are very regulated. You could say, fine, my accounting is 30 miles ahead of yours. I would say I beg to differ. Okay, on the average scenario, you find that the core of the ERPs, which is, I would maybe pick as finance, accounting, procurement, sales, probably HR, for any given market, you'd find 80–90% of whatever it is that you need really runs right across the board. Okay, but we as vendors, we still look at that as a key differentiator. And I want to say that we should be looking at that as a key differentiator. We should be looking at the differentiators being on what else can you be able to innovate around the core? What else can you be able to do on our vertical applications? How much more can you be able to innovate around our vertical applications? If we can be able to commoditize the core, well, for instance, sometime in the future, a lot of us will be using we'll be having our own Android, and then possibly SAP, possibly the next vendor can be able to use a certain core. Then it makes life easier for everyone. But right now, as we speak, one person goes this way, the other person goes this way, the other person goes this way. At the end of the day, what you end up having is the same scenario we're looking at today, where customers are saying, you know what, we are not happy. Maybe we're not listening well enough. We want to be able to come together and ask ourselves, what can we be able to do together? While at the same time, we can still be able to differentiate ourselves. If you look at the companies, for instance, which have come around Android, for instance, they're not small companies. Samsung is not a small company. LG is not a small company. They have their own operating systems, but they sit down and say, it is better for us to be able to work together, at least to get a common core, and then innovate differently thereafter to be able to differentiate ourselves. Because I want to believe that you really are not going to differentiate yourselves from just the basic finance, basic HR, basic procurement. So with those few comments, and maybe I'll just leave you with a very brief quote from Gartner. This is what the future looks like. Heavy adoption of open source at the core of commercial software. So developers can focus on pushing the envelope of innovation, not reinventing the wheels, that really provide no discernible differentiations. Let us learn to share our experiences. Let us learn to share on our common cause, so that the end result is that we can all have, hopefully, a much better ERP implementation. So with those few comments, I will end my presentation, and thank you.
Thank you, I will welcome Bobby. Invite the panelists at the front. This month here, you will see rightly that ERP software are nowadays practiced with generic best practice. Welcome.
Thank you, Andrew. Good morning. I just call on the media, please. Can you join us at the front? Yes. View. Then you have a problem. We know the biggest failure in organizations to implement ERPs has been the siloing.
Maybe I should answer. I brought this up. Yes. What I would like to say is this. When you look at implementing an ERP solution, you find most people don't just jump into implementing an ERP solution as the first solution. You find there's going to be these many little applications, and correctly, each of them serving a certain fiefdom. You find someone who say, okay, finance will do payroll, someone else says, as we do HR, as we do finance. Now the problem is that you can't. Yeah, I think you've had this before and you think it's funny. Someone is asked, how many employees do we have? HR will tell you we have 1,000, but payroll tells you we have 3,000. Okay, that has happened. It continues happening. Now someone then asks, why can't we just have one truth of how many employees do we have, how much inventory do we have, how much are we selling, who are our customers, okay? It's when you get to that point that you want to bring in a solution that will be able to, or rather the entire organization will be able to look into one solution that can be able to give you the entire breadth from A to Z. When you start getting to that point, then we are talking about you wanting to implement an ERP solution. You want one solution that will be able to bind your entire organization together. Of course, you need to do quite a lot of change management. Okay, the silos that are there need to be broken down because in the world that we talk about today, you really might not even just belong to a certain department. You probably might be right across the board. Okay, you might be in the CIO at the same time you're the one who is doing performance reviews of your employees. So in a way, you probably are going into HR. You probably be the one who will be sitting down and planning the budgets for the entire organization. Probably something that used to be done by finance. So we see ourselves breaking down the barriers for us to be able to work more efficiently. So I guess in a nutshell, that's probably what I'd like to say. Maybe on the political part, even the government right now has what they call it, open data portal. Yes, at least there's some data online that they're trying maybe to give us one truth of how many Kenyans there are in this country. You know, none of us don't know how many. So I guess in a nutshell, that's probably what I would like to say.
Thank you very much. This is a complex problem, okay? And the reason I held back is that when you look at it, when the question is asked initially, you look at it from a data content point of view, and that's just one part of the issue. The reality is that you will never, ever be able to have all your data about a single entity in a single place. Our processing capability will have to grow to a phenomenal level before we're able to do that. So the bottom line is you're going to have dispersed information. SAP ERP, okay, prefers to operate with all of the data centralized. But the reality is in the real world it doesn't work that way. The data is spread out across the different systems, okay? Not only is it spread across the different systems, if you think of the real value of ERP, the value of ERP is not just to one organization. You get value from ERP when you manage the end-to-end process. So I want you to think of Kenya, okay? Think of Kenya from the end-to-end process point of view. And possibly your rail network or Kenya Port Authority or one of those types of guys, okay? And think about how they need to manage an end-to-end process to make Kenya more productive. So how do you solve that data problem where the customer information is going to sit all over the place? Well, funny enough, the problem has been solved. It was actually solved 8 years ago. It was solved through the United Nations. The United Nations called for people to participate in what is known as the United Nations CFACT CCTS standard. 8 years ago, only one vendor held their hand up, went in and did all the work with it. That was SAP. And we defined with the United Nations what the data standard should be. So for an address, how many address fields do you need? How long should it be? How long should the address code be? How long should a gender field be? Etc., etc. And how should you define it? So when you define data at that standards level, again, at the individual organization level. And then the question becomes, so where does the master of this particular data set, your home affairs should have your ID number, that should be your single point of truth for them. They should know when you were born, and they should know what your gender is at least. Okay? Your address, where should you address it? Okay? Because it could sit in your local municipality. Because then every time you move, when it gets updated, everyone would have access to that. Now we're starting to look at a cloud structure. How do I do governance across that? So these are the points that I'm trying to get to. By the way, Oracle joined the UN CFACT conversation about 7 months ago. So we're starting to get some traction. And The issue is industry standards. That's where the actual solution is. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. Those are very comprehensive answers. Got a question? Let's just give us your name and then you can ask the question.
My name is William Otiso. I work with Finlays. My question was around SAP or ERP in relation to the cloud. Currently, what I hear being mentioned is that costs around SAP infrastructure, support, and so on and so forth. But what are you doing as SAP in rolling out or thinking about these kind of applications being put on the cloud, where we have shared services and shared support and so on and so forth? As it is right now, it almost feels like these applications are for companies that are established and have already grown. But what are you doing in the line of SMEs and small emerging companies that will need ERPs? Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the question. So, last question, and I challenge all of you to go to a website called www.ondemand.com. And on there you'll see a number of cloud applications that are available for you to use. Okay, so our cloud application is called, you'll see on that website, it's ERP in the cloud. It's called Business by Design. It's available in other parts of the world. We have not been prepared to bring it to Africa at this stage. And the reason for that is the cost of the solution, okay, on the ERP backend side comes down quite radically. But our costs in our data networks and moving the data volume around and the reliability of the networks is not where it needs to be at this stage. So we were going to roll Business by Design out in 2009 across Africa. We did a test, it didn't work. Okay, we held back on it. We did some improvements in the mature markets, being Germany, the European sort of market, the American market, etc. And when our networks are ready, we will bring it out into the African market. But in the meantime, what you've got to realize is that you can't wait for that to put ERP in place, because all that is ERP in the cloud. It's the same processes that you need to run on premise. At some stage, you saw the Jeffrey Moore model. There's things you're going to want to do on premise. In other words, they are critical for you, and there's things that you want to be able to do in the cloud. And you need to be able to handpick which components will be on premise, because they're strategic to you, and which components need to run in the cloud, and then you've got to manage the end-to-end process. That's the critical thing. So the solution is there. The geography is not ready for it yet. In its place, I don't know if there's any SAP partners here, but we've introduced a solution called Business One, which is ERP for very small businesses, which enables you to get the same benefit for a small startup company. Cheap, can be live in a couple of weeks, low cost.
Did anybody sign a non-disclosure when you walked in? I just want to make sure. Really, there's a chance here for you to leapfrog SAP. You've got a question. When do we get an ERP on the cloud?
Implementation, and they say we really don't want to host this ERP in our premises because of the cost of power here, the cost of making sure you have proper backup, that the power goes for let's say a couple of hours, people can still be able to work. But I guess it's because right from the start, the solution was designed to be able to run on the internet. So being able to migrate to the cloud is not really a big issue. I would also like to say this. When you talk about the cloud, it's a very good one that is coming out. Okay? It's very, very good that is coming out. But they'll tell you if you've been in the ICT industry for a very long time, there's really nothing new under the sun. Okay? don't be maybe too excited of saying, okay, fine, let's just throw everything that we have into the cloud. How at least sit back and ask yourselves, our links good enough? Some people start off with emails. Yeah, you run, for instance, your email system for a period of about a year, and you know how to break down, and then maybe then you can think and say, hey, why not also move our other applications? But maybe don't just run and jump into the cloud before you sorted out your infrastructure, your internet links, etc. So take your baby steps. Make sure that the infrastructure is there. Make sure at least you can be able to access the internet. Solutions to the cloud are there. We build those as well. So that should not be a problem.
Yeah. Thank you. Barak from Afri Register. My question goes both to Gigi and Alvin with regard to innovation. Looking at the flyer, it talks about 60% of the ERP systems failing, but with regard to innovation, I'm curious because I see a lot of parastatals, for that matter, say flying people to Dubai or wherever for training for this number of months. We are talking about disclaimers here. And I believe it's a problem across the African market. And on one hand, it is good in terms of per diem, but on the other hand, there is a problem in terms of knowledge transfer. And for as long as this, what is it that can't be done here, that has to be done in Dubai or wherever? Is it that we adapt, or is it that we don't have networks, or what? I'm very curious because look at the large portion of our market. 70% are SMEs, as our colleague here has said, and beyond the parastatals with the billions that they have, which are now being seriously controlled. What's next? Because that is where the future of the ERPs lies. Thank you.
Would like to take that. Not the Padian part.
I don't mind tracking, but let's start with the 60% number first. Okay? I believe it's actually much higher than that. It's closer to about 90% of ERP implementations in the African continent on delivering what I believe the true potential is. So that's my belief, based on the feeling within the organizations. And the bottom line is we go at ERP projects with the incorrect mindset. Okay? ERP for me is just that little thing in the middle that becomes your system of record. That's all that it does. It's very difficult to calculate an ROI on it. You can calculate the difference in cost between the way you did it before and the way you're doing it now. But you can't calculate the return on investment on it. That's the bottom line. If you think you can, if you think you can calculate an ROI on an ERP, you're actually kidding yourself. Okay? So ERP is the core that goes into your system. It's your system of record, and it's a part of your organization. In the same way, your people and your chartered accountants and their accounting capability, that's all part of one thing. It just helps you to keep score. Okay? When you want to get an ROI, you've got to look at what you do around that ERP. Okay? And that's where the innovation actually comes in. And how can I do things around this thing that makes me different? And that is where you actually get the value. So this issue of how much time we put into ERP, the first problem we've got in Africa is the guys want to own this thing called ERP. And we want it in a room next to the CFO where you can see it every day. Okay? And that's a problem. So what you should be doing is, the partners in this country should be going for a hosting model at least. And they should be saying, we're going to take the SAP HR model as an example, okay, and we're going to offer a service where we can run Kenyan-based payrolls instead of each company actually going through that paying themselves. And then what you should do is locally share that resource and bring the transaction cost down. Okay? Bring the transaction cost down in the actual country. And the transaction cost is not in the software. Trust me. Smithsonian Awards and people from all over the world have come there to see what these guys have done. Okay? The ERP system, everyone said, costs close to 800 million rand. Okay? It's over 110 million US dollars. You know what the software cost in that installation? 25 million rand. Where was the rest of the cost? Implementation, hardware, training, all of those types of things. That's where the cost is. Okay, so when you want to bring the transaction cost down, absolutely not in the software, it's in all of the things that you do around it. So we've got to change our actual mindset. I'm going to repeat what I said earlier on, okay? The guys overseas seem to know how to do this much better, much cheaper than we do. I did a proof of concept about 2 months ago, okay? And I needed access to scalable hardware resources. So I needed an ERP system, a CRM system, I needed a business intelligence system, I needed process integration, etc., etc. The Amazon guys, Amazon, you know the Amazon book company, they offer a cloud capability and they run SAP in the cloud. And because it was for a POC, we could do it, okay? You know, it wasn't like ongoing business operations. I think you all saw the other day the Amazon cloud went down for a couple of hours. Okay? So we went to and said to the guys, this is what we wanted, and this is for how long we wanted. What's the cost? The biggest hardware that they could provide, guess what the cost per hour was? $2.50 an hour. $2.50 an hour. That was the cost. Room, can you beat that? Okay, because if you can, there's a business opportunity waiting for you. You're still going to pay for your SAP licenses. Okay? Because the key with ERP is when the accounting system goes wrong, if it goes wrong, you're going to point at us. We're the only ones that tamper with that cloud. No one else tampers with it. That's the guarantee we give you. You're still going to pay for your licenses, but the costs are everywhere else.
Thank you.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Yes, I think I'd like to respond to that question as well. And let me start by saying this. That question is a question I think I probably asked myself that about 10 years ago. Why? If you're going to implement a software solution, why do you have to fly all around the world just so that you can be able to get the training that you need to be able to, just to be able to use the solution? If you look at the general case scenario, software is just any other branch of engineering. Okay, I don't think there's anything you can say so special about software that you probably wouldn't get in electronics. You wouldn't be able to get into mechanicals. You wouldn't be able to get into civil engineering, for instance. And if you ask yourself, there are very few people today who would be building a building of this sort, and you have to run all around the world to get an engineer, a civil engineer, an electrical engineer, whatever engineer that you want, an architect, just so that they can be able to build for you this building. We do have the resources to be able to put this kind of solutions here. We need a different mindset. Because if you have to do what you say you have to do, what happens when the solution breaks down? Will you also have to run all around the world again so that they can be able to get